Good morning, Little Masters, and welcome to today's Tolkien Times. I'm the Man of the West, also from the Prancing Pony podcast, and it's time for a very special week of the TTT as I celebrate the holidays by spending these 6 days in Letters from Father Christmas. Now, I'm hoping to spend a week during the winter holidays each year sharing some of these often hilarious, always heartwarming stories that Professor Tolkien wrote to his children. From his first letter to his eldest son John in 1920, all the way through the last letter to his youngest child, daughter Priscilla, in 1943. And I promise we will actually get to those letters themselves soon, but not today. Today I want to share a little bit about the publication history of the book, as well as some words from Baillie Tolkien, Christopher's wife, who edited the volumes. And I say volumes plural because there are quite a few. The first was a 1976 large format hardcover. For those of you watching on YouTube, it's this book right here. This one right there. In Baillie's own words in the introduction, it has been possible to give only a few examples of Father Christmas's shaky handwriting and of the decorations of the letters and the envelopes. Quite. In fact, the emphasis on this volume seemed to be on Tolkien's illustrations, with the letters partially transcribed and only a few, mostly partial reproductions of the original letters and envelopes. Paperback editions followed a couple of years later with no changes. Now, there was a 1994 release of the same content in 3 miniature volumes. So I say same content. It added a little bit new, while a 1995 hardback added removable facsimile reproductions of actual letters. But the 1999 large format hardback added even more, including all of the pictures and a much more complete transcription of the letters themselves. On the official website of the Tolkien estate, there's a lovely essay from Baillie Tolkien, and I'm going to share a few bits and pieces from that. She tells a little bit about the history of the letters, beginning with the first one received in 1920 by J.R.R. Tolkien's 3-year-old firstborn son, John. His second son, Michael, had been born in October of that year. The third, Christopher, joined them in 1924, and their sister Priscilla in 1929. A letter arrived every year until the end of 1943, and during that time, the letters and the world of the North Pole evolved. It became more exciting. And she also explains that in keeping with the atmosphere of the published work, the introduction evades the issue of the true author of the letters, who was, of course, J.R.R. Tolkien himself. Throughout the period in question, the older children kept the secret as they learned the truth, so the younger ones could continue to enjoy the excitement and suspense. And when Professor Tolkien died in 1973, these precious family letters were believed to have been lost. But the collection turned up in the huge volume of papers that he'd kept. And though they hadn't been written for publication, the idea was intriguing. Baillie again writes, Christopher was still teaching at Oxford and immersed in the sorting of his father's papers, as well as the preparation of Sir Gawain and Pearl for publication, not to mention early research into the state of the Silmarillion. And as I had previous editorial experience and was obviously readily able to consult Christopher, I was asked, Baillie says, to look at the letters with a view to their being made into a book. Now, it was the first posthumous publication of Tolkien's works, too, so I'm sure the pressure was quite something. After assembling this more complete edition of 1999, to which that essay refers, Baillie adds, people have told us how they incorporated it into their family Christmases, reading the first letter on the appropriate day before Christmas so as to arrive at the last letter on Christmas Eve. Other families were inspired for a time to take up the game. In our own family, for a few years, Christopher wrote letters, and I drew pictures for letters to be discovered by our children. I'll have to ask Simon about that next time I get a chance to talk to him. I can't say that I've done this, of course, but I'm certainly inspired to do so, and maybe, just maybe, I can set out to do this in 2024. Now, after that 1999 edition, there was a 2004 revised edition and a 2009 trade paperback edition that included a few changes. For those of you who are really interested in the details of what's in which volume, there's a great article on Christina Scull and Wayne Hammond's blog, Too Many Books and Never Enough, where Christina goes into great detail on the variations, additions, and omissions. I'll link to that in the show notes. And then there's a tremendous resource on the Tolkien Collector's Guide that lists what elements of each letter, transcription, art, envelope, and stamp, are included in each of the editions, and I'll also link to that. Now, the 2012 hardcover got a lot closer to including everything, and the quality of the reproductions was much improved. But it's the 2019 hardcover deluxe edition and the identical in content 2020 Centenary Edition that you want if you've never owned a copy. YouTube viewers, these are the books I'm talking about. Now, as Baillie Tolkien explains in her introduction to this most recent book, in this new edition, produced to celebrate the centenary of the arrival of the first letter, is presented for the first time every example of Father Christmas's shaky handwriting in his letters and on the stamped envelopes which carried them, and all the pictures that he sent are here reproduced. Also included is the alphabet that the polar bear devised from the goblin drawings on the walls of the caves where he was lost, and the letter that he sent to the children written in it. Well, folks, that wraps it up for this first day in the Letters from Father Christmas, but please join me again tomorrow as we begin exploring the letters themselves. Learn how you can support the TTT by visiting patreon.com/TolkienTimes. You can become part of my content council, join me for a monthly hangout, and get a full episode bonus every week. If you're watching this on YouTube, please take a moment to like and subscribe. It really helps. And please follow or subscribe on your podcast apps. And follow at Tolkien Times on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. Finally, as Faramir says, go with the goodwill of all good men.